Welcome back to Thai Learn Lifestyle. This video is going to be everything that I'm personally doing to help myself learn vocabulary. I have years of experience learning multiple languages, and I want to share with you what I'm using, what's working for me to learn all the vocabulary that I need to know in the Thai language as quickly as possible. So the reason for me making this video is that I had a friend who's learned Japanese ask me like, hey, I'm trying to learn vocabulary. I'm using flashcards. It's not really working too well for me. And when I'm listening to everybody speak, I don't understand a single thing of what is said. And I completely understand this because I used to be that type of learner where I used to go buy those paper flashcards or use just an Anki deck and wondering why I can't understand the word I just learned in context. Like if I heard it spoken by a native speaker, I would have no idea what is the person saying, and I just don't understand the vocabulary. Is it me not understanding the word, or what is going on? So I'm going to share my top 5 tips that I developed over the years to help myself learn vocabulary. If you have any other tips or recommendations for learners, please leave them in the comment section below. This channel is not me being an expert of the Thai language. It's just me sharing my journey, my own discovery of the Thai language. The number one thing that I'm doing to help me understand the Thai language better and develop my sense of vocabulary is listen to native content. Now, when I first heard the Thai language, everything sounded the same. It pretty much sounded like a gibberish kap ku ka type of sound because my ears was not trained to how the cadence, the sounds of the Thai language actually are in native speech. So even if I heard a single word, I never heard those words in a flow of a sentence. So using vocabulary lists, studying words individually kind of gets you to a point where you might understand the word, but you can't actually understand the vocabulary when you actually need to understand it and when you need to actually say it in a sentence, because unless you have a lot of time listening to the language in its natural cadence and its natural speech, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to actually have output of the language correctly because you never heard how it kind of flows together. You have to understand that language is just like French and whatnot. You can learn the individual words, but unless you actually hear them spoken in a sentence, you don't know how the music, the flow of the actual language, the beauty of the actual language itself, how it sounds, how it's living actually is. You never get to experience that unless you hear it in context from native speakers for an audience of native speakers. So I've definitely opened my range of native content drastically. At first, I was only studying Thai for about, 15, 30 minutes a day. I quickly realized I need to drastically input more. There's definitely channels that will go over, talk to you like a baby from the beginning and gives you tons of content like that. That's great. We're going to talk a little bit about more of that later. But what I like to do is look at content that actually gives me interest, because if you ever had to listen to something that you didn't have interest in, you drastically find it more boring and your ears never get as trained as well. So again, I've been listening to this real estate channel, an amazing channel where this girl goes in, views all these luxury homes in Thailand in the Thai language for Thai native speakers. And it's drastically helped me understand how the classifiers for rooms work, how it sounds when you're putting sentences together, how somebody in the actual occupation of real estate actually sounds. And it's opened my ears drastically. So I was going through learning the words at first, just through my book. And what I realized is that even if I learned the word when the native speaker talks very quickly, I didn't understand it at first. But listen to hours and hours and hours of content that's travel related, cooking related, and real estate related. I definitely found that I had a lot of interest in this. And when I actually learned the words that revolved around these topics, it was much easier to actually remember these words and actually produce them in a sentence if I needed to. And again, I drastically ramp up the amount of time I'm actually studying Thai. So now active studying with me looking in a book is probably going to be more like an hour a day, with probably another hour or two of just listening to native content, because I quickly realized that even though my wife is Thai, I never really had an interest in Thailand until very, very recently in my life. So what I quickly realized is that even though I had Thai speech occasionally around me, I never had anything that interests me. So when I did hear it, it was all just that one type of sound where I couldn't really distinguish words themselves until I drastically increased my input of native content. And what I did with this native content, I didn't just listen to it once and done. I'll listen to the same house tour over and over and over and try to put things together, even if I don't understand 50%, 80% of it. I'm trying to do my best, and the words that I do hear that I do know, especially when I do the real estate one and they're like, oh, this is the kitchen, it has 3 bedrooms, it has 4 bathrooms, it has a pool. I've learned these words through my other textbooks and learning materials, and when I hear it over and over, it definitely reinforces those words where I just don't forget it, and it's really opened up a lot of doors to increase in my vocabulary, especially in Thai, because the words can get very long and very different than any other language I have ever studied. It also drastically helped me to get better at hearing the words, even if I don't understand them completely, in the native speed of the speaker. So when a native speaker of Thai talks, they tend to talk much quicker than they would in your intro beginner textbooks. And this leads a large gap between beginner, intermediate, and advanced and native levels of speech. It's the how they talk, what they leave out of their talks, and the information given. But I definitely realized that I've been increasing my ear's ability to hear individual words. Even though I don't understand all the grammar yet, the words themselves I get to hear over and over due to the massive amount of input I have been getting in the Thai language. All right, number 2 thing to use to drastically improve your vocabulary in the language is to use an actual textbook. Now, some people have a fear of using textbooks. I've had a very positive experience, especially the way I structured things, and I want to share this. So what I first did when I first started learning Thai, one of the books I did pick up for this series was the Ask Emil book. I particularly picked it up because I know it's structured in a way where all the sentences will progress upon themselves, and it has repeated vocabulary throughout the lessons, and it has tons of audio from natives so I can understand the language much better. And it's just not a random, say, YouTube video. So there are some YouTubers out there that do excellent, one-off videos that explain a grammar topic and talk about some words. However, I quickly realized, especially with the Thai language, because the words are completely different than anything like French, Japanese, or anything else I've ever learned, is that I need a lot more of a structural approach. And even in the beginning, I still feel like using the Ask Emil book has drastically helped me, because the speech that is given in a lot of Thai books is way too quick unless you've listened, like I said in step number 1, to hours and hours and hours of native content. The Ask Emil book is superior with its audio. I listened to the Becker's Thai book audio. It's way too quick when I first tried to use it. I didn't understand even, it was a pleasure to meet you. It was too fast for my ears at the time. But the structure of the Ask Emil book definitely helped a lot, because it gave me a good chunk of the language and ability to hear everything drastically better. But as I progress, I'm getting towards, past the halfway mark now of the Ask Emil book. I'm going to be finishing that book probably at the end of the month here. And I already started the Thai Becker's book because I wanted to get to the intermediate book as quickly as possible. Now, a lot of the words in the Becker book were actually already learned in the Ask Emil book, but not in a very structured approach. So sometimes it was kind of hard to recall everything in your head, but a structural approach, as you'll get beginner's Thai book from Becker, it definitely allows me to reinforce everything I already went over in the Ask Emil book in a more structural approach. And a lot of people need that. I personally really enjoy the structural approach. So I use, say, Genki 1 and 2 for Japanese, and it definitely helped a lot out getting to other textbooks that helped me later in Japanese, was just to get the basics of the language, to understand something that's very different grammatically. The textbooks definitely provided that type of resource for me. And when I learned other languages that were further away from my native language, it definitely helped to get some type of structure in a program to cover all the grammar points and provide vocabulary that's systematically builds upon itself. Because if you're just learning, again, random vocabulary lists made by others on Anki and these other platforms, it's going to be very difficult to learn all of the words if you don't have any type of context to actually remember them. But a beginner's textbook is definitely a great place for you to actually practice the language, develop it slowly and over time with a systematic approach. And a pro tip is make sure that you, before you start switching your beginner textbooks around, you practically almost finish the one book, because the worst thing you can do is start, over 10 different beginner textbooks to learn to say the exact same things over and over. Because if you do that, you're never actually going to learn the language, especially like Thai. You need to keep the progression going. Even though you may feel like the book is the most boring thing in the world at that point, if you're already 3 months into it, you need to make sure every single dialogue that you're doing in these books, you can practically remember every single thing. I remember still to this day, back in my university days, of going through the Genki 1 and 2 books. I can tell you still today, most of the stories I read and listened to over and over from, Takeshi-san and Meri-san, back in the day from those Genki books, because I kept listening over and over and over to those audios. And that's what you need to do with these books, is go over them over and over and over. Again, if you're working a muscle, you start off slow, you build up with the exact same form. You don't just change the exercise around to get stronger in an exercise. You keep it very consistent in order for you to get better at that particular thing. So you need to become the best at this push-up, and that push-up is gonna be textbook 1. And then you're gonna work on your squat, and that's gonna be textbook 2. You're not just gonna be doing random stuff like pull-ups and everything else to get better at these. You're going to gradually increase these books in a systematic way, and that's how textbooks can definitely help you. Number 3 tip is to keep a notebook. So one thing that I did, I started in my Japanese when I used to learn that, was that I used to keep a notebook where I kept a daily journal, and I try to use the words that I learned that day in the journal just to reinforce it. Yes, it may not be 100% correct, but the vocab that I wrote in those journals, the kanjis, and all those things like I'm doing now in Thai. Granted, I'm not writing the Thai script yet. I do have plans on learning the script, but I'm gonna keep focusing a lot more on listening and speaking. And I do plan on learning the Thai script. It's just due to the nature of the Thai script and my actual goals, it might be better for me just to keep learning and push off the Thai script until I get done with the beginner's Thai book. Again, I'll go over that in probably in a future video of my plans about learning the Thai script quickly and effectively. But so when I write in the journal, what I'm doing now for Thai, I'm writing off the phonetic system that I basically used over and over in the ASMO book, and talk about my day. If I learn about a car, how to say like, I need this, I'm going shopping for this, I'm going to write it in the journal and use that vocabulary in my daily journal. And that enforces what I've learned in the books. Again, progressively increasing my vocabulary and learning how to use it in context to later be able to use it in my actual speech. You start thinking about the language that you are learning in context. This gets you so much quicker in that translation error, because you don't want to get stuck translating from English into the language that you're learning. You want to quickly start thinking in that language that you're learning and start outputting in the language that you are learning. So writing is a great step to increasing your abilities of speaking and understanding the vocabularies, learning every single day while you're studying. Number 4 tip is just to keep on listening. The number 1 thing I said was listening to native content geared towards native speakers of Thai. Well, this step is actually listen to native speakers geared towards learners of the language. So you do want to mix in stuff that's easier for you, that's like kiddish, the beginners, they're slow Thai. I believe there's a channel like Thai with Grace I've been listening to. Really great at reinforcing what you've been learning. Expose yourself to many different types of speakers of the language with different accents to get a better understanding of what you need to sound like in the language, become more effective at listening and understanding the vocabulary, how you use it. Because again, listening to the words over and over in context is drastically going to increase your vocabulary because you got repetition and you have your own, with the spaced repetition system they try to do with these software programs. You have that built in if you're listening to beginner content over and over, because you're gonna have people introducing themselves, telling what they're doing, where they're coming from, how old they are, what they're buying at the market, and you're gonna have this stuff over and over and over to reinforce the exact same words in a slightly different way. But because it's a slightly different way in native speech, it drastically helps you with remembering the vocabulary a lot more effectively than you would if you're just remembering flashcards. And number 5, and probably the absolute best thing to do in order to increase your vocabulary in any language, is reading native content in the actual language itself. So as I mentioned, I can't read or write in Thai. And those are due to, my own reasons where, you may be amazing at learning the Thai script quickly and effectively, but I want to be able to speak at an A2 level and understand what people are saying by 1 year. And the Thai written language, some may say, is absolutely systematically amazing. I find it, as an English speaker and a language learner of other languages, it can be difficult at times, and it's something that I'm going to learn after I get a basic understanding of the Thai language just a little bit better. But I do plan on learning it because, again, reading native content is probably one of the absolute best things that you can do if you're planning on increasing your vocabulary, because written language will expose you to many, many more words than you'll use in your everyday life. And that's what I've done with multiple other languages that I've learned in the past. Especially my favorite author is Haruki Murakami. I believe reading his books in different languages that I'm learning has drastically increased my vocabulary greater than probably even the textbooks could ever teach me, because I already know the content. It's my favorite author. I know exactly how the story's going, but I'm learning it different languages that exposes me to different vocabulary, a different way, and understand the meanings of the words themselves and how they're used in phrases. And a pro tip here is to make sure that the book you're buying has an audiobook version in that language as well. I did that with French, and it drastically helped out as well, because I got to listen and read at the same time and help with my intonation, my speaking abilities. But again, it drastically helped with my French vocabulary more than my intro level French books probably ever did, because it really secured everything together because I was reading native content. It got me excited. It was one of the reasons why I was learning the language, is to be able to use the language itself. And it was that feedback mechanism that drastically increased my ability to remember vocabulary, was reading. Again, reading is the key to increasing your vocabulary. It's probably one of the most important things you can do. So in any language you're learning, Japanese, Korean, Thai, Chinese, your goal is to be able to get eventually up to a level where you can read native content. If you want to be fluent in the language, it makes everything drastically easier and gives you a vocabulary that's actually going to impress the native speakers more than any other thing that you could possibly do. If you have any other tips to share with other language learners, any tips about Thai or anything else, please leave them in the comment section below. I wanted to make this series to support any other language learner in their journey, and hope that we can all reach our goals before we die. So other than that, take care and enjoy your learning.